That evening, as the sun set behind her controversial banner, Karen Whitmore sat on her porch and thought about flags, lies, and the complicated nature of heroism. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new opportunities to choose between comfort and truth. But tonight, she simply watched her neighborhood, her community, and smiled at the sight of American flags fluttering in yards up and down the street. Whatever her father's true story, whatever her own flawed motivations, this was real. The banner would stay up, the truth would come out, and Karen Whitmore would face whatever came next with the same stubborn determination that had started this whole beautiful mess. After all, sometimes the wrong reasons could still lead to the right place. Karen's hand trembled as she gripped her phone, Brad's distorted voice echoing through the door. The security camera showed him swaying slightly, the knife clutched in his right hand. Though now she could see it was just a box cutter, not the kitchen knife her panic had imagined. "Brad, go home," she called through the door. "You're drunk. You're making this worse." "Worse?" His laugh was hollow, broken. "Karen, you destroyed my life in one afternoon. Cindy's already talking to divorce lawyers. The Attorney General seized my business records. My own brother-in-law won't return my calls." Karen leaned against the door, listening to the desperation in his voice. This wasn't the Brad Morrison who'd ruled the HOA with an iron fist for 2 years. This was a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse. "You did this to yourself," she said quietly. "The corruption, the kickbacks, that was your choice. It was business. Everyone does it. You would have done the same thing if you'd stayed in power." The accusation hit harder than Karen expected. Would she have? The question gnawed at her as she heard Brad sink down onto her porch steps, the box cutter clattering against the concrete. "I just wanted to make money," he whispered. "Keep the neighborhood nice, make a little profit. What's wrong with that?" Karen unlocked the door slowly, opening it just wide enough to see Brad hunched on her steps, his head in his hands. The box cutter lay forgotten beside him. "Brad, look at me." She stepped onto the porch, her bare feet cold against the concrete. "This doesn't have to destroy you. Resign from the board. Make it right." He lifted his head, and Karen was shocked to see tears streaming down his face. "You don't understand. The landscaping deal was just the beginning. There are other contracts, other arrangements. When the investigators dig deeper, then get ahead of it. Cooperate. Come clean." Brad stood slowly, wiping his face with his sleeve. "Easy for you to say. You'll be the hero in all this. The patriot who exposed corruption. I'll be the villain." Karen looked at her banner, now barely visible in the darkness except for the faint outline against the streetlight. "You know what my dad used to say? You can't control what people think of you, but you can control what you give them to think about. Your dad, the war hero. My dad, the insurance salesman who lied about his service record for 40 years. The words came out before Karen could stop them. "He never set foot in Vietnam. Spent the war stateside, filing paperwork. But the lie got him respect, promotions, sympathy. Built our whole family identity around it." Brad stared at her. "You're lying." "Found out after he died. Going through his papers." Karen's voice was barely a whisper. "You want to know why I put up that banner? Guilt. 40 years of living a lie, and I thought maybe if I waved the flag loud enough, it would somehow make it true." The silence stretched between them like a gulf. Finally, Brad picked up the box cutter and stood. "So we're both frauds. We're both human." Karen met his eyes. "The question is what we do next." Brad walked down her front steps, pausing at the edge of her driveway. "Your banner stays up? My banner stays up. But not because of my father, because sometimes the right thing and the wrong reasons can still lead to the right place." He nodded once and disappeared into the darkness. Karen watched until his taillights faded, then went inside and locked the door. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat by her window, watching her banner flutter in the breeze, thinking about truth and lies, heroes and villains, and the strange paths that lead us to redemption. The resignation letter arrived via email at 6:47 a.m., just as Karen was making her first cup of coffee. Brad Morrison's message was brief, professional, and copied to every homeowner in the subdivision. Effective immediately, I resign from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA Board of Directors. I will be cooperating fully with the State Attorney General's investigation into potential conflicts of interest. I apologize to the community for any breach of trust. Karen stared at the email, feeling a strange mix of victory and hollowness. She'd won, but the taste of triumph was complicated by Brad's broken confession on her porch hours earlier. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor Patterson. "Did you see the news? They're calling you the Flag Crusader. Channel 7 wants another interview." By noon, the media circus had returned with reinforcements. Karen found herself fielding calls from national news outlets, morning shows, and a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell her story. The narrative was irresistible. Suburban HOA mom takes on corrupt officials with the power of patriotism. If only they knew the truth about her father. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Jessica Chen appeared at Karen's door again, this time with a different energy. "I wanted to ask you about your father's military service. We'd like to include that angle in our follow-up story." Karen's coffee mug suddenly felt heavy in her hands. "I'd rather keep my family out of this. But it's such a powerful part of your story. The daughter of a Vietnam veteran, carrying on his legacy of service. My father's service is private." Karen's voice was sharper than she intended. "This is about the community, not about me." Jessica's reporter instincts sharpened. "Is there something about your father's service you'd rather not discuss?" Karen closed the door without answering, but she knew the question wouldn't disappear. In the age of internet research and public records, lies had a way of surfacing at the worst possible moments. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Tom Bradley stood on her porch, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman in a crisp business suit flanked him, her smile professional but warm. "Karen, I'd like you to meet Sarah Mitchell. She's running for city council, and she has a proposition for you." Sarah stepped forward, extending her hand. "Mrs. Whitmore, what you've done here has inspired people across the district. Your fight against HOA corruption, your stand for constitutional rights. It resonates with voters who feel powerless against bureaucratic overreach." Karen shook her hand cautiously. "What kind of proposition?" "Run for city council. With me. Your story, your platform. It could win." The idea hit Karen like cold water. "I'm not a politician." "Neither was I until I decided to become one," Sarah said. "Look, the media attention you're getting won't last forever, but you could turn it into something lasting. Real change instead of just symbolic victories." Karen glanced at her banner, now slightly tattered after days of wind and weather. "I need to think about it." After they left, Karen walked through her neighborhood, really seeing it for the first time in years. American flags flew from a dozen houses now. Neighbors who'd been strangers waved from their driveways. Mrs. Martinez called out in Spanish, and while Karen didn't understand the words, the gratitude in her voice was universal. At the end of Oak Street, she found Old Man Hendricks tending to his flagpole, polishing the brass fittings with military precision. "Quite a week," he said without looking up. "Indeed." Karen watched him work. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Hendricks? About the war, about service." He paused, meeting her eyes. "What do you want to know? Did you ever question why you were there, whether it was worth it?" Hendricks was quiet for a long moment. "Every day. But service isn't about never questioning. It's about showing up anyway." Walking home, Karen made her decision, not about the city council, that could wait, but about the banner, about the truth, about the woman she wanted to be moving forward. She pulled out her phone and called Jessica Chen. "I want to do that follow-up interview," Karen said, "but I have some things to clarify about my father's story. The real story." Karen Whitmore yanked the zip ties tight around the fence post with such force that her manicured nails cracked against the plastic. The massive "Support Our Troops, USA Strong" banner stretched across her entire front yard, its red, white, and blue fabric snapping in the morning breeze like a war cry. "There," she muttered, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Let's see the HOA try to find me for this." The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd spent 3 years as the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association president, wielding her clipboard like a sword against loan violations, unauthorized mailboxes, and Christmas decorations left up past January 15th. But that was before the new board voted her out, before they had the audacity to cite her for her excessive 4th of July display last year. Mrs. Patterson from next door peeked over their shared fence, her grey curls bouncing as she craned her neck. "Karen, dear, that's quite a statement. It's called patriotism, Eleanor," Karen shot back, adjusting her reading glasses. Something this neighborhood seems to have forgotten. By noon, Karen's phone was buzzing like an angry wasp. Text after text from the current HO president, Brad Morrison, flooded her screen. "Karen, the sign violates Section 4.7 of our covenant. Remove it by 5 p.m. or face fines. This is your official warning. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm serious, Karen." She tossed the phone onto her granite kitchen counter and poured herself a glass of wine. Through her bay window, she watched Brad's silver Lexus crawl past her house for the third time, his wife Cindy passenger seat driving from behind designer sunglasses. The doorbell rang at 2:47 p.m. "Karen." Brad stood on her doorstep, clipboard in hand, his polo shirt pressed to perfection. Behind him, 2 other board members flanked him like bodyguards. "We need to talk." "About what?" "My right to free speech." Karen crossed her arms, blocking the doorway. "About the covenant you helped write," Cindy interjected, stepping forward. "Remember Section 4.7? No signs larger than 2 square feet without board approval." Karen's laugh was sharp as glass. "That was to stop people from advertising garage sales and political candidates. This is about supporting our country. The rule doesn't make exceptions for patriotism," Brad said, his voice strained with forced patience. "You know this. Then maybe the rule is wrong." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired cannon. Karen could see the exact moment Brad realized she wasn't backing down. His jaw tightened, and Cindy's grip on her purse handle went white-knuckled. "Remove the sign by 5, or we start fining you $50 a day," Brad said quietly. "Don't test us, Karen." As they walked away, Cindy whispered something to Brad that made him shake his head. Karen watched them retreat, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd drawn first blood, but she knew Brad Morrison well enough to know he'd draw second. And his aim was usually better than hers. At 5:01 p.m., Karen's phone chimed with an email from the HOA's automated system. Test for unauthorized signage. Daily fines will continue until compliance is achieved. Karen deleted it without reading past the subject line. By Thursday morning, 3 more neighbors had erected their own signs. Nothing as bold as Karen's banner, but American flags sprouted from front yards like patriotic dandelions. Old Man Hendricks, the Korean War veteran from Maple Street, installed a flagpole that could probably be seen from space. Karen stood in her driveway, coffee mug in hand, surveying the spreading rebellion with the satisfaction of a general watching reinforcements arrive. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor Patterson. "Put up my husband's old army flag. Brad came by. I told him to kiss my American ass." Karen nearly choked on her coffee. Eleanor Patterson had never said ass in her 73 years of life. "Excuse me, Mrs. Whitmore?" Karen turned to find a young woman with a press badge and a camera operator behind her. The reporter's smile was bright enough to power the neighborhood's ring doorbells. "I'm Jessica Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd heard about your sign controversy. Would you like to comment?" Karen's heart skipped. She'd spent years avoiding attention, preferring to wield power from the shadows of committee meetings and strongly worded letters. But as she looked at the camera, then at her banner fluttering proudly in the breeze, something shifted inside her chest. "This isn't about HOA rules," she heard herself saying. "This is about what we value as Americans. The right to express our love for our country shouldn't be subject to a homeowners association's approval." The interview lasted 15 minutes. Karen found herself talking about her father's service in Vietnam, about neighbors who'd sent sons and daughters overseas, about the erosion of patriotic values in favor of property values. Words she'd never spoken aloud poured out of her like water from a broken dam. By evening, the story had aired. By morning, Karen's phone was ringing off the hook. "Karen Whitmore." The voice was gravelly, unfamiliar. "This is Frank Kowalski from the Veterans Affairs Office. Saw you on the news last night. Wanted to say thank you." Then another call. And another. Veterans, military families, neighbors from other subdivisions. Karen's inbox filled with messages of support, photos of flags and banners appearing in yards across the city. But Brad Morrison wasn't sitting idle. "Karen." His voice was ice cold when he called Friday afternoon. "You've made this personal. The board voted. Emergency meeting tonight. You're banned from all HOA events and facilities until you comply. Your pool pass is revoked. Your guest parking privileges are suspended. You're punishing me for exercising my constitutional rights. I'm enforcing the covenant we all signed, the one that protects our property values." Karen stared at her banner through the window. The fabric had begun to fray at the edges, but it flew as proudly as ever. "Then I guess we're at war, Brad." The line went dead. Karen set down the phone and noticed her hands were shaking, though whether from fear or anticipation, she couldn't tell. Saturday morning brought the news crews. Not just Channel 7, but 3 major networks and a cable news van parked strategically across from Karen's house. The Meadowbrook Estates entrance looked like the site of a breaking news story, which Karen supposed it was. She watched from her living room window as Jessica Chen interviewed Old Man Hendricks beside his towering flagpole. The old veteran's voice carried across the street. "Fought in Korea, so people could fly the American flag in their own damn yards." Karen's doorbell hadn't stopped ringing since 7 a.m. Neighbors she'd barely spoken to in 15 years stood on her porch with casseroles and words of support. Mrs. Chen from Oak Street brought homemade cookies shaped like flags. The Martinez family from the corner house delivered a pot of their famous chili and a handwritten note. "Thank you for standing up for all of us." But it was the visit from Tom Bradley that changed everything. Tom was the neighborhood success story, a tech entrepreneur who'd made millions before 40 and bought the biggest house in Phase 3. He was also, Karen had always assumed, too busy and important to care about HOA politics. "Karen," he said, settling into her kitchen chair with surprising familiarity, "I've been watching this unfold, and I think you should know something about our dear friend Brad Morrison." Karen poured him coffee, her curiosity piqued. Tom had the kind of quiet confidence that made people listen. "Brad's been pushing the board to approve his brother-in-law's landscaping company as the exclusive contractor for all common areas. 3-year deal, no competitive bidding. I did some digging." Tom pulled out his phone, scrolling through documents. "The contract's worth $400,000. Brad gets a 15% finder's fee." Karen's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. That's corruption. It's a conflict of interest at minimum." The vote scheduled for next month's board meeting. "Your little flag rebellion is drawing attention Brad doesn't want right now." The pieces clicked into place. Brad's urgency, his escalating threats, the emergency meeting to ban her from HOA events. This wasn't about property values or covenant enforcement. This was about money. "Tom, why are you telling me this?" His smile was sharp. "Because Brad Morrison tried to have my home workshop declared a commercial operation last year. Cost me $3,000 in legal fees to fight it. Sometimes the enemy of your enemy is your friend." That afternoon, Karen called a press conference. She stood in front of her banner, flanked by veterans and neighbors, and dropped the bombshell about Brad's landscaping deal. The story exploded across social media faster than she could refresh her phone. By evening, the state attorney general's office had issued a statement about investigating HOA corruption. Channel 7 ran an expose on Brad Morrison's business dealings. Karen's banner, originally just a symbol of patriotism, had become a flag of rebellion against a corrupt system. But victory came with a price. At 11 p.m., Karen's security system chimed. Someone was on her front porch. She checked the camera feed and her blood ran cold. Brad Morrison stood at her door, but this wasn't the pressed polo shirt Brad she knew. His hair was disheveled, his eyes wild. He held something in his hand that glinted in the porch light. A knife. Karen's finger hovered over the 911 button on her phone as Brad raised his fist to knock. His voice, when it came, was barely recognizable. Karen, open the door. We need to end this. Tonight.